Ladies and gentlemen, women don't respect every man. They don't respect the one who begs for attention, who bends under pressure, or who sacrifices his dignity just to be liked. No, women only respect the man who stands firm, who owns his life, who cannot be shaken, bought, or broken. And the truth is, if you're not that kind of man, you will never earn lasting respect. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what makes the difference between the men women overlook and the men they cannot help but respect. When it comes to respect, women don't hand it out lightly. Respect is not something you can demand, beg for, or manipulate someone into giving you. It is earned, felt, and instinctively given to a man who embodies qualities that stand the test of time. Respect flows naturally toward the man who knows who he is, what he stands for, and refuses to bend to the pressures of those who try to weaken him. Women don't respect men who constantly chase approval, who bend with every gust of opinion, or who lose themselves in the process of seeking validation. Respect comes when a man shows the kind of strength that doesn't have to announce itself, because it's seen in every action he takes. The kind of man women respect is one who owns his presence. He walks into a room and doesn't need to shout, brag, or dominate others to be noticed. His energy speaks for him. He knows his value, not because someone else confirmed it for him, but because he built it through hard work, discipline, and persistence. This kind of man doesn't need to impress anyone. He impresses himself with how he shows up every single day. That quiet confidence is magnetic. Women instinctively feel safer, stronger, and more inspired around a man who carries himself with that kind of grounded assurance. Respect grows when a man knows how to set boundaries. Too often, men confuse being liked with being respected. They give in too easily, agree too quickly, and let others take advantage of them in the name of being nice. But women don't respect the man who's always agreeable. They respect the man who has the courage to say no, the strength to stand firm, and the clarity to hold his line even when it makes him unpopular. Boundaries are not walls, they are standards. They say, "This is who I am, and this is what I will or will not tolerate." A man without boundaries communicates weakness, but a man with them communicates strength, self-worth, and leadership. Leadership is not about controlling others, it's about being in control of yourself. Women respect men who don't fall apart under pressure, who can think clearly when others panic, who maintain composure when chaos erupts. This doesn't mean a man never feels fear or doubt. It means he knows how to regulate himself, manage his emotions, and respond instead of react. That kind of self-mastery is rare, and it commands respect because it shows discipline. Women are drawn to men who lead not by words, but by example, who inspire through action rather than empty promises. Another critical piece of respect is integrity. Women can admire charm, looks, or charisma in the short term, but respect endures only when a man's words align with his actions. If you say you'll do something, you do it. If you make a commitment, you honor it. If you set a goal, you pursue it with persistence. Integrity means you cannot be bought, bribed, or broken into betraying your values. And make no mistake, women see this. They may not always comment on it, but they notice. Every choice, every inconsistency, every excuse communicates who you are. A man who is reliable and consistent earns a trust that is the foundation of lasting respect. Respect also grows from purpose. A man wandering aimlessly, without direction or vision, might be tolerated, but he won't be deeply respected. Women respect men who wake up with drive, who have a mission larger than themselves, who chase excellence not for applause, but because they refuse to settle for mediocrity. Purpose makes a man magnetic. It shows he is not wasting his potential, that he is building something greater than comfort or convenience. A man with purpose is harder to manipulate, harder to sway, because he knows where he's going, and that certainty inspires confidence in those around him. Another truth, women respect men who respect themselves. If you don't take care of your health, if you neglect your mind, if you surround yourself with toxic people and accept mediocrity, you're showing that you don't value yourself. Why should anyone else? Self-respect is not arrogance, it's discipline. It's showing up for yourself physically, mentally, emotionally. It's choosing growth over excuses, standards over shortcuts, truth over comfort. When a man respects himself, it radiates outward. Women see it in how he treats his body, how he speaks, how he carries himself, how he navigates the world. Communication is also key. Women don't respect the man who hides behind silence out of fear. nor the one who dominates every conversation to prove his worth. Respect is given to the man who listens with presence, who speaks with clarity, and who can express himself without resorting to anger or arrogance. A man who can articulate his thoughts, who can stand firm in a disagreement without becoming disrespectful, shows strength of mind. And strength of mind is deeply respected because it shows emotional intelligence, not just brute force. Courage plays a role as well, not reckless bravery, but the courage to take risks, to step into discomfort, to face what others avoid. Women respect men who are not paralyzed by fear, who don't need to be rescued, who don't shrink back when adversity rises. Courage means you're willing to do what's right even when it's hard. It means you can stand alone if necessary, that your character is not for sale. That level of courage communicates security, and security is something women deeply respect in men. But let's be clear, respect doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean never failing or never struggling. In fact, women respect men who can admit mistakes, who take accountability, who own their failures without excuses. That level of humility shows maturity. It shows strength, because it takes more courage to say, I was wrong and I'll do better, than it does to hide behind pride. Accountability turns failures into stepping stones, and that resilience earns long-term respect. Finally, women respect men who live with authenticity, not the image of a man you think others want, but the reality of who you are. Pretending, posturing, trying to be someone you're not. It all collapses eventually. Authenticity doesn't mean oversharing or being reckless with your truth. It means being rooted in who you are and unapologetic about it. A man who embraces his individuality, who knows his values, who stands firm in his identity without bending to the expectations of others, commands respect effortlessly. Because authenticity is rare, and in a world full of masks, the one who's real stands out as powerful. Women only respect this kind of man, not the man who demands respect, not the man who hides behind arrogance, not the man who chases approval. They respect the man who has built himself, his discipline, his purpose, his integrity, his self-respect, piece by piece. They respect the man who doesn't need to control anyone else because he is in full control of himself. And they respect the man who inspires them, challenges them, and holds a standard not only for himself, but for everyone around him. They respect the man who has walked through fire and come out stronger, the man who carries scars not as excuses, but as proof of what he has survived. A man like this doesn't need to convince anyone of his strength. It's in the way he moves, the way he speaks, the way he doesn't let life break him. Women sense this resilience. They respect the man who doesn't crumble when life gets hard, who doesn't play the victim, who doesn't wait for someone else to solve his problems. Instead, he steps up, shoulders the weight, and keeps moving forward. That unshakable determination is magnetic because it shows he is not defined by circumstance, but by his response to it. Respect is also rooted in consistency. A man who is unpredictable, who acts one way today and another tomorrow, cannot be trusted. And without trust, there is no respect. Women respect men whose words and actions line up not just once, but consistently over time. They respect the man who does not need to be asked twice, who follows through, who shows up when he says he will, and who stays the same whether people are watching or not. Consistency reveals character. It proves reliability. And in a world full of broken promises and shallow commitments, the man who stays steady earns the kind of respect that doesn't fade. There's also the power of discipline. Discipline is respect turned inward, and women notice it immediately. A man who disciplines his body, his habits, his routines, is a man who has self-control. He doesn't let impulses rule him, he doesn't let laziness rob him, and he doesn't let distractions derail him. Discipline is not about perfection, it's about commitment. And women respect the man who proves that he can master himself, because it shows that he is dependable. A man without discipline is unpredictable and weak, but a man with discipline commands respect without having to raise his voice. Respect also belongs to the man who protects, not just physically but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Protection is not about control, it's about presence. It's about being a shield, someone others can rely on, someone who provides safety through strength and stability. Women respect the man who protects not only them, but also his values, his dreams, and the people he loves. Protection is strength in action. It is quiet, steady, and powerful, and women deeply respect the man who shows this kind of courage without needing recognition for it. A man who respects time also earns respect. Time is the one thing you cannot buy back, and a man who values his own. Time communicates that he values his life. He doesn't waste hours on trivial pursuits, doesn't squander his potential in meaningless distractions, and doesn't invest himself in relationships or environments that drain him. Women notice how a man spends his time. They respect the man who invests in his growth, who uses his time wisely, who is intentional about where his energy goes. That kind of focus makes him rare, and rarity commands respect. Respect flows toward the man who can remain calm in conflict. Arguments and disagreements are inevitable, but women pay attention to how a man handles them. Do you lose control? Do you shout, insult, or run away? Or do you stay steady, collected, and firm? A man who can keep his emotions in check, who can articulate himself with strength and clarity, who can disagree without disrespect, earns a different kind of respect. Because it shows he is not controlled by anger or pride. It shows he has mastered his emotions instead of being mastered by them. And women respect men who don't just win arguments, but who win respect by how they conduct themselves in difficult moments. Another layer of respect is earned through resilience in failure. Every man will fail, but not every man will rise. Women respect the man who doesn't let failure define him, who learns, adapts, and grows stronger after every setback. They respect the man who owns his mistakes without blaming others, who accepts responsibility and then turns it into action. Failure is not weakness when handled this way. It becomes strength. Women don't respect men who avoid risk out of fear of failure, but they deeply respect the man who faces failure and keeps moving forward anyway. That resilience is rare, and it builds a foundation of respect that lasts. The way a man treats others also determines how much respect he receives. Women notice how you treat people who can't give you anything in return: the waiter, the cleaner, the stranger. They notice whether you carry yourself with arrogance or with quiet confidence. Respect is not earned by belittling others, it's earned by treating others with dignity, while never lowering your own standards. Women respect men who know how to be strong without being cruel, who can be kind without being weak, and who never need to degrade others to elevate themselves. That balance of strength and humility speaks louder than words. Another important quality is vision. Women respect men who think beyond the moment, who are not trapped by instant gratification, who see the bigger picture and move toward it with focus. A man without vision is lost, drifting with whatever comes his way. But a man with vision commands respect because he sees what others can't, and he's willing to build it step by step. Vision gives direction, and direction gives confidence. Women respect men who know where they're going and who refuse to settle for less than what they're capable of achieving. Respect is also tied to emotional strength. Many men mistake shutting down or suppressing feelings as strength, but true strength is being able to face emotions head-on without being controlled by them. Women respect men who can process pain, disappointment, and even fear without collapsing under it. They respect the man who can acknowledge his feelings, but then channel them into growth, action, and discipline. Emotional strength is rare because it requires honesty with yourself, and honesty is something women deeply value. They also respect men who can adapt. Life is unpredictable. Plans collapse, circumstances shift, and nothing stays the same forever. Women respect the man who can pivot, who can adjust without losing himself, who can face the unknown with confidence instead of panic. Adaptability is strength in motion, and it communicates that you are resourceful and capable no matter what happens. A man who is rigid and fragile breaks under pressure, but a man who is adaptable bends, adjusts, and endures, and women instinctively respect that kind of resilience. Respect is not given to men who chase validation, but to those who stand secure in themselves. When a man constantly seeks approval, it shows neediness. But when a man validates himself, when he knows his worth regardless of external recognition, he carries a quiet power. Women respect men who don't need the spotlight because they are secure in their identity. That security is rare, and it creates a kind of gravitational pull. It shows that you are not easily swayed, not easily broken, and not desperate for attention. And that kind of confidence commands deep respect. Lastly, women respect men who inspire, not by preaching, not by demanding, but by the way they live. Inspiration comes when a man sets a standard and holds himself to it. It comes when he lives with courage, discipline, and integrity. It comes when he chases greatness not for applause, but because he refuses to waste his life. Inspiration is contagious. It makes others want to rise higher, and women deeply respect the man who doesn't just talk about growth, but embodies it in every area of his life. They respect the man who doesn't settle for average, who challenges himself, who refuses to compromise his values. They respect the man who commands his own life instead of waiting for permission. They respect the man who builds himself into someone he is proud to be, and by doing so, naturally earns the admiration and respect of those around him. They respect the man who is not afraid to stand alone, because that man has proven he will never lose himself in the crowd. They respect the man who is unshaken by the noise of the world, who does not bend his character just because it would be easier to go along with the crowd. The man who earns respect is the one who holds his ground when others waver, who keeps his voice steady when others go silent, who speaks truth even when it is unpopular. Women respect men who have the backbone to stand for something meaningful, because it shows courage, it shows conviction, and it shows that he cannot be manipulated by fear or social pressure. This type of man does not need validation from the masses because he lives according to his values, not the fleeting opinions of the day. Women also respect men who are builders, men who create, who leave something behind that speaks of their presence long after they're gone. A builder is not just a man who constructs businesses, wealth, or material things. He is someone who builds himself, his character, his relationships, his legacy. A builder leaves behind order where there was chaos, growth where there was stagnation, strength where there was weakness. A man who builds shows vision, patience, and persistence. And women deeply respect the man who doesn't just consume or coast through life, but who builds something greater than himself. A man who refuses to compromise his dignity earns respect effortlessly. Dignity is not arrogance. It is knowing your worth and refusing to cheapen yourself for temporary gains. It is walking away from opportunities, relationships, or situations that would demand you betray who you are. Women respect men who do not sell themselves short, who are willing to sacrifice temporary comfort to preserve long-term honor. Dignity cannot be faked. It is felt in how a man carries himself and in the choices he makes. And once a woman sees that a man values his dignity above all else, respect follows naturally. Women respect men who bring order to disorder. Chaos is everywhere: stress, uncertainty, conflict, distraction. But the man who can step into chaos and bring clarity, direction, and calm stands out immediately. He doesn't feed into panic. He provides perspective. He doesn't make things more complicated. He simplifies them. He doesn't create drama. He diffuses it. A man who can bring order shows leadership, and leadership is one of the most deeply respected traits a man can have. Women see in that man someone who can steady the storm, someone who can be relied on when the world feels unstable. Another reason women respect certain men is because they refuse to be ruled by comfort. Comfort weakens a man when he allows it to define him, when he chooses ease over growth, when he avoids difficulty because it demands too much of him. But the man who willingly embraces discomfort, who pushes himself into the arena of challenge, who accepts that growth requires pain, commands respect. Women notice this. They notice the man who is disciplined enough to get up early when he doesn't feel like it, who works when others are resting, who trains when others are wasting time, who keeps moving when others quit. That relentless pursuit of growth through discomfort earns lasting respect. Respect also lies in a man's ability to provide clarity of vision, not just for himself, but for others. A man who can articulate direction, who can say, "This is where we're going, and here's how we'll get there," becomes someone others naturally trust. Women respect the man who can see farther than today, who can make decisions with wisdom, who knows when to take risks and when to hold back. That clarity signals strength, it signals capability, and it signals that he is not wandering aimlessly. Women respect men who live intentionally. Life is full of distractions designed to pull you in every direction, but the man who lives with intent stands out. He knows what he values, and he chooses accordingly. He doesn't allow others to dictate his pace or priorities. He doesn't get lost in what doesn't matter. He places his energy where it produces growth, where it builds, where it contributes to something meaningful. Intentional living is rare, and rare things are respected. A man who lives with intent shows that he owns his life, and ownership is a sign of strength. Respect grows for the man who can maintain self-control when provoked. Anyone can lash out when insulted. Anyone can lose their cool when challenged. But the man who remains composed under attack shows dominance without aggression. Women respect men who can respond with control because control demonstrates discipline, and discipline demonstrates power. It is not the loudest man in the room who earns respect. It is the one who could destroy with words or action but chooses not to. That restraint shows mastery of self, and mastery of self is mastery of life. Women respect men who do not dilute themselves for acceptance. Too many men tone down their strength, silence their voice, or minimize their ambition to fit into spaces where mediocrity is celebrated. But respect goes to the man who stands unapologetically in his power, who is unafraid to take up space, who refuses to shrink himself just to make others comfortable. Authentic strength is never hidden, and when a man shows up fully as himself without disguise, he commands respect from everyone, especially from women. Respect is also tied to a man's ability to take ownership, not only of his victories, but of his failures. Blame is easy, excuses are common, but ownership is rare. The man who says, "This is my responsibility, and I will fix it," proves that he is accountable. Women respect the man who does not hide behind excuses, who does not point fingers, who takes control of outcomes by first taking control of his role in them. Ownership shows strength of character, and strength of character cannot be faked. Another key aspect is the man's ability to remain grounded. Power, success, attention, these things can corrupt. But women respect men who stay humble while remaining strong, who remember where they came from while never losing sight of where they're going. Grounded men are steady, stable, and secure. They don't need to flaunt their achievements because their presence already speaks for them. Groundedness shows maturity, and maturity commands respect far more than arrogance ever could. Women respect men who honor their word. Words mean little if they are not backed by consistent action. Promises without follow-through erode trust, and without trust there is no respect. The man who treats his word as a bond, who follows through even when it is inconvenient, shows integrity. Integrity makes a man rare. It is the difference between men who are respected for life and men who are forgotten the moment they leave. Women know that words are easy, but action is costly. The man who pays that cost consistently earns respect that cannot be shaken. They also respect men who embrace responsibility rather than run from it. Responsibility is not a burden, it is proof of strength. A man who avoids responsibility communicates fear and weakness. But the man who accepts responsibility, who shoulders weight others cannot bear, who stands up and says, "I'll take this on," shows leadership. Women respect the man who doesn't collapse under responsibility, but who rises with it, who grows stronger because of it. That kind of man is rare, and his rarity makes him deeply respected. Respect belongs to the man who pursues mastery. Mastery is not about being the best in the eyes of others. It is about being better today than you were yesterday. It is about pushing yourself beyond average, beyond comfortable, beyond what others expect. A man who pursues mastery communicates discipline, focus, and determination. Women respect men who do not settle for mediocrity, who are constantly evolving, who are never satisfied with being just good enough. Mastery shows commitment to excellence, and excellence is always respected. Finally, women respect the man who knows his life is his responsibility to build. No one is coming to rescue him. No one is coming to hand him purpose, discipline, or strength. He takes ownership of his path, builds his future, and refuses to let life dictate who he will be. That man cannot be ignored, cannot be dismissed, cannot be overlooked. Because the man who owns his life owns the respect that comes with it. Because the man who owns his life owns the respect that comes with it. Women see the difference immediately. They see when a man has built himself versus when he is coasting, waiting for someone else to hand him identity, validation, or worth. They respect the man who refuses to be passive. Passivity is weakness. Passivity communicates a lack of direction, a lack of strength, a lack of courage. But when a man takes the reins of his own life, when he chooses to act rather than wait, when he chooses to move rather than hesitate, he becomes magnetic. Women respect him not because he tries to impress, but because his very life is proof of his power. They respect the man who refuses to compromise with mediocrity. Mediocrity is easy. It is where most people live. But the man who refuses to settle, who pushes himself into higher standards, shows he values himself too much to accept average. He trains harder, he thinks deeper, he works, he sees longer, he chooses better. He doesn't settle in relationships, in work, or in how he treats himself. And because he doesn't settle, women know they cannot treat him with anything less than respect. His standards elevate everything around him. Women respect men who can be both firm and compassionate. Weak men confuse compassion with submission, and hard men confuse firmness with cruelty. But true strength is a balance of the two. A man who knows when to be unyielding, who refuses to allow disrespect, but who also knows how to be patient, kind, and understanding when the moment requires it, commands respect. Women respect a man who can hold that balance because it shows mastery not just over circumstances, but over his own nature. They also respect the man who invests in himself continuously. Growth is not something that happens by accident. It is the result of intention. Women respect the man who reads, who learns, who develops new skills, who refuses to stagnate. They notice the man who values his mind as much as his body, who sharpens both so that he becomes complete. A man who never stops improving shows that he refuses to accept decline, and that commitment to constant evolution inspires deep respect. Respect belongs to the man who lives in alignment. Alignment means his actions, his values, and his words all match. It means he doesn't say one thing and do another. It means he doesn't present one face to the world and live another behind closed doors. Women respect this alignment because it communicates authenticity and truth. A man out of alignment may impress for a moment, but over time, the cracks show. A man in alignment needs no performance. He simply is who he claims to be, everywhere, always. That is rare, and rarity commands respect. They respect the man who doesn't allow fear to dictate his choices. Fear will always exist. It whispers doubt. It tries to hold you back. It makes you question your worth. But the man who acts anyway, who feels fear but still steps forward, shows true courage. Women respect courage not because it is flashy, but because it is uncommon. Most men give in to fear, hide behind excuses, and shrink. But the man who advances, who risks, who faces what terrifies him, becomes someone impossible to ignore. That kind of courage creates an aura of strength, and women naturally respect it. Women respect men who create structure out of their lives. Chaos destroys discipline, and without discipline there is no strength. But the man who structures his time, who orders his priorities, who organizes his world with clarity, proves he has control. He doesn't allow disorder to drain him. He builds systems that support his growth. Structure is stability, and stability is one of the most respected traits in a man. Women notice when a man can carry not just himself, but also create an environment where things run smoothly. That ability to provide structure speaks of maturity and capability, and respect follows it. Another truth is that women respect men who remain grounded in principle. Principles are the compass of a man. Without them, he drifts. With them, he knows where he stands, and everyone else knows it too. Women respect men who live by principle because they know such men cannot be easily swayed, cannot be manipulated, and cannot be broken down by temptation. A man without principle might win short-term admiration, but he will not earn lasting respect. A man with principles holds his life together with an integrity that women instinctively admire. They respect the man who doesn't shy away from hard conversations. Most avoid them. They fear conflict, they fear rejection, they fear confrontation. But a man who can sit down, look someone in the eye, and speak the truth, even when it is uncomfortable, earns respect. Women value men who can express themselves directly, without playing games, without manipulation, without hesitation. Honesty combined with strength and communication is powerful, and it signals leadership. Respect flows toward the man who has the courage to say what others avoid. Women respect men who maintain control of their desires. Lust, greed, envy, pride, these things destroy men when left unchecked. But the man who can control his appetite, who refuses to let base desires dictate his choices, proves that he is disciplined at the highest level. Women respect men who do not chase everything that glitters. who do not bow to every craving, who do not waste themselves on indulgence. A man who can master his own desires shows that nothing outside of him controls him. That kind of mastery is deeply respected because it is so rare. They respect men who know how to be alone without being lonely. Many men need constant distraction, constant company, constant validation. But the man who can sit with himself, who can thrive in solitude, shows independence. He doesn't need someone else to make him whole. He doesn't cling out of desperation. He chooses people out of strength, not need. Women respect the man who can walk alone because it means he cannot be controlled by the fear of being abandoned. His independence commands respect because it communicates completeness. Respect is given to men who hold their ground in the face of temptation. Every man will be tested, offered shortcuts, easy outs, quick rewards. But women respect the man who refuses to betray his standards just to gain something fast. They respect the man who chooses the harder road if it means staying true to himself. That level of discipline and integrity reveals who he really is. And when a woman sees that a man cannot be bought, that he cannot be seduced into betraying himself, she knows he is someone worthy of respect. Women respect the man who cultivates patience. Strength is not only in speed, force, or intensity, it is also in restraint. Patience shows control. Patience shows wisdom. A man who is patient knows that he doesn't need instant gratification to prove his worth. He builds slowly, intentionally, without being rushed by pressure or insecurity. Women respect men who do not panic when results take time, because patience reveals faith in self, and faith in self is a mark of confidence. They respect men who inspire trust without needing to beg for it. Trust comes from behavior, not from demands. A man who shows himself trustworthy through action, who guards confidentiality, who honors commitments, builds respect without having to ask for it. Women respect men they know they can count on, not men who constantly make promises but never follow through. Trust is built quietly, but once established, it creates an unshakable foundation of respect. Finally, they respect men who embody resilience, not just physically but mentally and spiritually. Life is relentless. It tests, it bends, it breaks. But the man who continues to rise, who adapts, who refuses to quit, earns admiration that lasts a lifetime. Women respect men who don't crumble under pressure, who face storms with resolve, who take every setback as fuel. Because when they look at such a man, they see strength, they see leadership, they see someone they can believe in. Respect doesn't come from words, from demands, or from appearances. It comes from who you are when life strips everything else away. And the man who remains strong, principled, and unshaken, no matter the storm, is the man women will always respect